thank you for people who've joined today. I know it's sometimes a difficult one to join, attend a meeting after a long day's work, or especially today when it's been super amazing weather as well. So I do appreciate your time, and I hope you do get a lot out of it. My name's, I suppose a bit about myself. My name's Narain. I'm a salaried GP in Chesterfield. I also work as a GP trainer, and I'm also a training program director for GP training in Chesterfield. And I suppose one of my other roles is a mentor for GPS and the new to practice scheme in Derbyshire, which helps me with, sort of, follows on nicely from what we're going to talk about tonight, really. I hope you all do get something out of the session. If it's possible, if you can have your cameras on, I just want to make it as interactive as possible. And hopefully you go away with some tips about how to, I suppose, improve the mental health of men that it could be a colleague, a friend, family member, and hopefully raise awareness of what is, I feel, a very important topic. As I say, my name's Narain, and I suppose this topic's very important to me, just on a personal level, as well as helping other people as well. So if anybody's on Twitter, feel free to contact me if you feel. I thought this was quite, I think more than actually the overview, the words that are left, I think more the picture paints 1,000 words, really. This figure trying to ask for help, preventing himself from drowning, really. And I suppose we tonight could be the that buoyancy aid that stops them from sinking. And we'll be going through a bit about why do we bother about even talking about this, what's the coverage like in the public in the media, risk factors that men can have for having mental health issues, how they might just appear, and actually moving on to practical advice about what we could do to identify and help people, men that we know. I just want to start off by just letting people just read that poem, really. It's by a gentleman called Richard Bamford, and I think it really highlights what men go through. I think sometimes in the media, or day-to-day life, people talk mainly that men don't suffer with issues such as these, but actually it's a more common problem than we realize. So why do we bother? Actually, out of interest, I know that the slide on the right is from last year, but this is actually Men's Health Week. So I don't know if when Aram and I were discussing, but I think it just out of coincidence was Men's Health Week this week to pick today's date. So I think it's very, brings that into focus, really. So, if you look at the data on the box on the left, it's quite a stark reminder that quite a lot of the majority of suicides are roughly 3/4 are male. Most men just don't want to talk to anyone. And there you go, the same stat again. 3 out of 4 men or suicides are by men. And if you look at this little, I suppose this little figure here, it sort of highlights some of the reasons why men may not access or talk about these issues. So how, in terms of employment, their effect on their self-confidence, they might lose focus as well. So I think overall, the biggest takeaway from this slide is that it's a massive issue, and the majority of suicides are by men. And I'm sure that the data hasn't changed up to the current date. I was trying this YouTube video earlier on, but for some reason it wasn't working. But it was just about a famous actor. I'm sure you remember him, Robin Williams, who unfortunately took his own life a few years ago, and who suffered with quite serious depression. And on the face of it, he was someone who played roles as a comedian. You wouldn't have ever thought, looking on the outside or watching his movies, that he had any issues. But that's the stark reality, really, that you won't see that you won't see men just opening up most of the time. So it's a silent killer, unfortunately. Men do suffer in silence most of the time. So moving on to, I suppose, I was talking about the public eye. A few of you may recognize these three individuals. A gentleman on the left is a famous musician, an artist called Shawn Mendes, who you can see he wasn't aware of how he was feeling, and then he opened up and realized, okay, this is what anxiety feels like. Gentleman at the bottom left, Michael Phelps, is one of the most successful Olympians from America. He's a swimmer. And again, for all the success he's had, you wouldn't have thought that, okay, this is a person who's going through mental health issues. But I think the key thing here is that actually he's opened up about how he feels. And then we have finally Prince William on the right, who is actually an advocate for men's mental health, and who's actually been diagnosed with PTSD and depression himself. And I'm glad that there is this increased effort among celebrities to raise awareness. So if we're thinking about what risk factors men have towards going through a mental health issue, I think some of these are, you can say that about women as well, but I'll just run through a few of them. So, relationship issues, we're talking about not just with your partner, your spouse, but with other members of the family, either, children, parents, etc. Financial difficulties, so, loss of job, and we know that COVID's not been easy on that. Major life changes, for example, with their health, or having to move house, or relationship breakdowns. And let's not forget, having a long-term condition, living with this condition day in, day out, can affect you, especially, thinking about diabetes, cancer, the worry that comes with cancer sometimes, how might they support their family, and, financially, for example, or even being a carer for a loved one. So the carer stress, more and more I'm seeing in my own work, men, in their 60s or 70s have been carers for their spouses or partners, and who don't have that independence, not independence, but that identity anymore. Their identity is that of a carer, so they can be under a lot of stress. Men, on the whole, are generally more likely to turn to substance misuse, so alcohol, smoking, recreational drugs, as a coping mechanism. Childhood trauma, so it could be anywhere between domestic abuse, domestic violence, being a witness to it, or being a victim of it, or even sexual abuse by elders. There's an interesting theory called adverse childhood experiences, which I won't go into today, but explains or contributes to a lot of kind of psychological trauma in the patients that we see day in, day out. So work problems, it could be too stressful, too many responsibilities on them, or perhaps not even enough work. With COVID, it's been difficult to find work. Again, vicious cycle. It leads into financial difficulties as a result. I think this is one of the biggest ones, issues, expectations of being a man. I think perhaps slowly changing in the public eye, but there's still this thought or idea that you have to be a man. You have to sort of be the breadwinner. You have to be strong at all times. And I could certainly say that was the case 40, 50 years ago, perhaps. But there is this expectation of being a man, and that you shouldn't feel this way. You shouldn't talk about these things. And COVID-19, last 2.5 years, has been majorly disruptive and difficult for most, if not all of us. And for the people who live on their own, lots of isolation, loneliness, particularly with the younger generation and elderly as well, who may have lost their partners. So that's a major, major issue. And actually what we're seeing now is a lot of people presenting with mental health issues, anxiety, depression, stress, as a fallout from COVID-19. And then the last few are the BAME, so the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic groups. They face a lot of isolation, rejection, particularly in the workplace. But hopefully that's been changed by things in sport, like campaigns such as Kick Out Racism, or even the Black Lives Matter movement. Veterans, let's not forget veterans, they're a high-risk group for developing PTSD. And actually, the topic of veterans, before I forget, is that to qualify as a veteran, you just have to serve 1 day in one of the armed forces out of interest. And actually, if you're a veteran, you're actually part, or you're eligible to receive support under the military covenant. And all practices or GP surgeries in Derbyshire in the UK can sign up for this. And so if you need quick access, or you need to refer your male or any veteran quickly for any services, you can specify that on the referral letter. And they have specific mental health support lines for veterans. It should be on Derbyshire Pathfinder somewhere. And they provide a very good service for our veterans. I think there's a chat. Oh, sorry. So what might men, or men look like? How might they appear? I think the most important one is the one on the bottom. They just seem different. So if you have a good relationship with people, or you've seen them quite a lot, especially work colleagues, when people are different. They're making mistakes at work, difficulty concentrating. They might not be keeping up to date with their jobs or admin or whatever. They're running behind all the time. You just notice that they're off. Or they might lash out when actually they're quite a mellow person. They might become irritable or aggressive. They can feel restless, for example. You might see them in meetings and feel restless, and they don't feel as if they can take on any more work. And one little thing might push them over the edge. I think the suicidal thoughts is perhaps something that may not come out with straight away. That might come down further down the line when you're discussing with them. But overall, they just seem a lot more different. And I think we all as humans have a spidey sense, or second sense, or sixth sense, or if when things aren't quite right. So don't ignore that internal feeling. I suppose don't ignore it. Be aware of it and do something about it, really, which we'll come on to in a moment. So I suppose my own story, why this stuff is so important to me, is that I think it took me a long time to accept there were, I had issues with my own mental health. Growing up, I had counselling through university with stresses of being at university and away from home, etc. But then over time, it's stresses of work, for example, things like imposter syndrome. And I think for me, as we will discuss later on, one of the most important things was accepting there was an issue and discussing it with others. And I saw the benefit it had to me about opening up and being vulnerable and accepting there was an issue. And one of the reasons I started being a mentor is that I can share that wisdom and help others in similar situations. And I think that there's a lot to be said about showing your vulnerable side and asking for help. Actually, it's one of the most important things that can help people through with their mental health issues. Brilliant. So I'm going to stop talking for a while. And what we'll be talking about is, sorry, just before you join, is just spending about 10 minutes about reasons why men don't seek help. I think we've touched on quite a few of these already in the chat there. So societal expectations, what people expect of a man, quite a lot of machoism. And the other one is that they want to burden others. They just don't want to, put on other people. And I see this a lot in patients who are older, who have been through things like world wars or lived through difficult times, and they don't want to burden other people. And there's a financial thing here that they have to be the breadwinners of the family. They have to be the one in control. And as Brett mentioned, they've got harmful coping mechanisms as well. This is the last breakout room, I promise, guys, but I felt you get more out of it if you discuss it between yourselves. I do promise that it does work. So the next breakout room, we'll keep it shorter for 5 minutes, just until 10 to. And how can we help people who come and speak, or specifically men who come and speak to us about their issues, or what are the small things that we could be doing or looking out for, perhaps. I think moving on to, I think, again, majority of this has been covered, so I won't labour the point, but one thing I found quite useful is asking men, or people, sorry, twice. The first time you pass somebody in the corridor or in a group setting or wherever, you might ask them, how are you? But actually, you ask them again, how are you actually doing? And they're more likely to open up with that second how are you question. Reading between the lines, again, it may not be so easy to pick up with men. It may take a few interactions with them, quite subtle cues, actually. They're showing a change in behavior, for example. Men are unlikely to come out and just say their issues, say their problems, really. If someone's inviting you for a drink, especially men, and you're a close friend to them, or your colleague, I would suggest taking them up on the offer. He might want to have a proper chat with you over a drink where he feels most comfortable. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. Obviously, we know that sometimes, having just said what we've just said, alcohol might be one of their vices that they turn to. So consider that as well. But do take them up on the offer if they want to talk to you in person or privately. Banter. It's a cultural thing. It happens all around the world. In groups of men and women, for sure, and mixed groups as well. But it's knowing when to end the banter. So if you sense that something's wrong or it's not being received in the right way, think about stopping it and ask that person if it's okay. And phrases such as, you might have heard this around, grow up or man up, are not helpful. And so actually quite a lot of men have said those are conversation blockers, and they may not ever open up about their issues again. And I think, as we've just discussed, don't make it awkward. Just know that they're supported. Just listen to them. As Brett was saying, go for a walk with them. Just provide them that space, just so they know they can speak. A few more tips is, if you are concerned about someone, just start the conversation. Check in on them. It may just be a simple text, quite a few texts, just say, that, you're thinking about them, hope they're okay. And they may not be quick to reply, but at least that person knows that you're there for them. Listen and reflect. So, give that person space to digest and reflect about what's going on with them. Try not to make assumptions about their experiences based on what other people have told you or what you've read about them, for example. Keep an open mind. Ask open questions as well, such as, how does that make you feel? How are you coping? Rather than closed questions which involve a yes or a no answer. Be patient. You aren't necessarily there to fix all their problems, but be patient and understand that they're going through a difficult time, and that it may take a few attempts for them to open up to you. And even if they're having a hard time, and if you've built up that relationship with them, just know that you just being there as someone for them to talk to is going to be so beneficial for them that they can eventually open up to you and create that safe space to speak about their issues, and ask them how you can help. So what can you do to help? It may be practical things. It may be just being there to speak to. And as I said, you don't have to feel like you have to fix all their problems. So advice. I like these quotes. An open ear reduces fear. So just listen. Actually, more often than listening will make that person better. We know that when we share our worries, we feel a lot better for them, or our concerns. And, using phrases such as, that sounds really difficult, or that must be very difficult for you. And as I said, just be a friend. Don't mend. Don't have to fix it all. I think, of course, if they are in a high risk situation, you're really worried about their own life, then take the necessary steps in terms of calling for the police or ambulance services, etc. But majority of cases, just listen and empathize with them. Just say, how can you help? That sounds tough. Very personal statements, really, about how you just being there for them, just being present, really, and listening to their issues. And these are a few sources of help. I'm happy to share this presentation, these slides, with everyone. So I think we've all perhaps come across these before. Samaritans, Mind, and IAPT stands for Improved Access to Psychological Therapies, and they're different in different areas, even within Derbyshire. So that's just a general overview for the whole of the UK. And NHS Practitioner Health is specifically for people who work in healthcare, so counselling services. It's a very good thing to signpost your healthcare professional colleagues to their own GP. Remember, you're not here to fix it all. You can advise them to speak to their own GP or any one of these sources, really. So that's my presentation, everyone.